Hello there, my name is Mackenzie. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be doing the first wrap-up of 2023, January's wrap-up. Did I accomplish all of the goals that I set out to do in January? No. Did I feel accomplished and happy with what I did accomplish? Yes. So we're just going to go ahead and talk about it. First, we are going to talk about the first two books. Not the first two books that I finished. However, these were rollover books from 2022. I finished Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is the fourth book, not including the prequel of the Throne of Glass trilogy. Throne of Glass series, which is like 8 books long. So can't really say too much about it aside from the fact that this is the first book that I feel like I've read where things are like getting going, and now we're kind of coming to a head with everything that's going on. Bad guys are being put into place and taken off the board. Our huge cast of characters is being moved around the board so that way they're in place for Endgame.
We're in the Endgame now.
But I also think that this is going to be one of the last books where I can end it peacefully and like not immediately move on to the next one, or be happy with what's happening, because I have heard after this one is Empire of Storms, which I know the cliffhanger that it ends on. And then Tower of Dawn follows, instead of the main character we have been following for the entire series, Selena, we are now following Kale. I hate Kale. I hate him so much. He's the worst character ever. He's a grown man and whines and complains about everything and refuses to make a moral decision. I hate him. I don't want to read like an 800-page book about Kale's perspective. I don't care. I'm really honestly thinking about not reading that one and skipping straight to Kingdom of Ash because I couldn't care less. But this is what we're talking about. I really did enjoy this one. I think that if you are not the kind of person that liked following like the Marvel movies leading up to Endgame, I don't think that this series is really for you, mainly because it's a lot of like moving people around and like giving them a reason to fight this fight or team up with this person. Relationship building is really slow. You know, a lot happens. So if that's not your cup of tea, it's just not your cup of tea and you're not gonna like this. But what I really did love about this book is that we have 2 characters meeting for the very first time. And if you know, you know. And I love them. They're everything to me. I feel like I was truly reading just for moments of them. I also did enjoy this book because very often I feel like there are side characters that get introduced into the story only to be like not important later. So we've kind of gotten a culmination of those characters in this book. So I did like that as well. I ended up giving this one a 4-star because I am enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. I love these characters. I really want to keep coming back to them. And I really enjoy the relationships between them. Then we have Manhunt by Gretchen Felker-Martin. This one was rough. I feel like I've been reading this one for years, and I'm done with it, but like it was really bad. It was not bad. It was really good, but it was really rough. Like if horror and gore porn and like splatterpunk are not your thing, then this is not for you. I had to take a lot of breaks reading this book. It's kind of hard to get through, but it is a really good story. I felt like the characters were very engaging. The apocalypse was very horrifying. Everything that was happening, it was like a car crash. Like I couldn't stop watching and reading, and I hated all of it, but it was great. So we are following 2 main characters, Beth and Fran. We do end up following a couple of other characters as well, and some of them come in and become main characters, and some of them come in and become like villains. And I think like with every good apocalypse story, this one has, fighting what is the apocalyptic event. Like in this one, it is the fact that anybody with a majority testosterone in their bodies are going to turn into these like horrible, mindless, disgusting beasts that really just like eat and kill. So there's that aspect of fighting those creatures, but there's also the aspect of fighting like the other humans that are left in the world, because of course humans can't figure their shit out enough to like decide we're all on the same side, the side of the living and the side of not wanting to be eaten. Like, that always frustrates me, but it's not like it's not out of character. And the older that I get and the more news that I pay attention to, I realize that this is entirely accurate. It's depressing. But this was really great. So I don't recommend it to everybody because there is like on-page sexual assaults and like references to those things and like extreme like homophobia and transphobia, and there's also like moments of like, what is it called? Like degradation. Sexual degradation? Is that a thing? It was in this book and it made me feel weird. So like, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. I'm not telling you to pick it up because you're really not missing much if you've seen any other apocalyptic movie. But I felt like this was cathartic, but also like very splatterpunk. You know, pick and choose what's for you. So those are the last two books that I was wrapping up for 2022. I didn't include these books in my numbers for books read or pages read. So I know I'm already doing myself a disservice by not doing that because I read the majority of both of these books in 2023. But that's just the way I'm going to roll with things, okay? So not including these books, I finished 5 physical books and 1 audiobook. Let's talk about the 1 audiobook that I finished first because I'm definitely going to forget about it if I don't. So that one was called All the White Spaces by Wilkes. And so I read this one for the Enby Book Club pick for January, which is run by Jess over at Bowties and Books. I am really trying to do like more like book clubby stuff, so that way I can kind of find more things that I love, because I started following the Literally Dead Book Club last year and I found a lot of great books that I really enjoyed and authors that I really want to read more from. So I decided to try out the Enby Book Club. This first pick was just not for me. I don't really care for snow and winter and cold as being like the bad guy. I didn't care about the dynamics between the guys, the characters, our trans character. I mean, they were fine, but I felt like what we were afraid of and what the story was talking about was so mediocre. I felt like there was also moments of them trying to bring in, like the author trying to bring in supernatural aspects, but also kind of using it as a cop-out and like maybe there is and maybe there isn't and maybe just people suck. And like, I don't know. It wasn't for me. I was bored a lot of the time. I didn't really enjoy the writing. Not good. I didn't like it. So I gave it a 2-star. Okay, now we're going back to our regularly scheduled order where I will go in order of which I finished them. I picked up Finlay Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano because the Literally Dead Book Club pick for February is the 3rd book in this series. So I was like, okay, let's give it a try. Let's give this series a try, and if I like it and I continue, and if I don't, I will just not do that pick for February. But I loved it. I did not expect to love it. This was great. This was absolutely amazing. This was very much like, I can't even tell you what it's like without ruining how great it's going to be. But if you're worried about being able to suspend your disbelief for how silly the premise is, don't worry about it. Trust and like give it about like 50 to 100 pages. I feel like is a perfect amount of time to give it, because maybe just like 80, like read up to chapter 12, and if you don't like it, you don't like it, put it down. But this was great. So we are following a mom. Wait, did I tell you what any of these books were about? All the White Spaces, we were following a transgender character who, after hearing of both of their brothers, so they have 2 brothers. And after hearing about the 2 brothers' death in a war, they decide to run away with like their childhood friend kind of deal, but also another guy that went to war with their brothers. And they run away to go to Alaska to like do an expedition of land that hasn't been charted yet. And like it gets kind of weird. But like as we just talked about, it wasn't weird enough. Now this one is about a woman who is going through a divorce because her husband had been cheating on her and is an ass. And she has 2 kids, and now because he is like an ass, he's trying to take her kids away from her and trying to get full custody. Even though the woman that he's with now doesn't like kids, doesn't want kids, and he's already cheating on that woman that he's with now. I hated that part, and I also hate everything that has to do with her husband. And really, it was her husband or her ex where I was like, I think I don't want to keep reading because I don't like reading interactions with the ex-husband. He's awful and I hate him. And I know I'm supposed to hate him, but I hate him more than I think that I should. Maybe that's a good thing. But so we have Finlay. I had to look at the back like her name's not staring me in the face. So we follow Finlay, and she is a writer and she is trying to get her book out. So she goes to meet with her editor because she needs like more money and she also doesn't have a book. So she goes to meet with her editor and they're talking about what the book is about, and like some character in her book is like killing somebody else, and she's overheard in this Panera, and then this woman propositions her to like go and kill her husband. And at first Finlay's like, I can't do it, like, what kind of person does that make me? And then her ex is like, I'm going to take the kids from you. And she's like, well, $50,000 could really go a long way. And it does. It's amazing. It's so good. This is a very, very great story. I love the way that it's told. I love the way that the plot comes together. I love that the way that at the end there's like reveals, not so much as twists, because if you're paying attention, you're picking up on the weird things that are like not explained enough, and so you know that there will be a reveal at the end. But it's good, it's juicy, it's a cozy mystery. It's really lovely, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this a 4-star, and I originally read it audibly, and then I picked it up physically because I needed to have it. But now I'm in this like awful position of having the book in paperback, and the 3rd book is coming out obviously in hardcover. So, you know, we'll probably be reading the rest of this series on Audible, on audiobooks, not on Audible because I hate Audible, but on audiobooks, and then I'll just pick them up in soft cover as they come out. Next, we have Woman Eating. So this book is part of a video vlog that I am doing where I compare vampire-adjacent stories to each other. That video is not out yet. When it does become available, I'll put it in the description for you guys. However, at this point, it's not out because it's taken me so long to read all of these books, and I don't know why. I do know why. I'm trying to read too many books in a month, and it's a struggle. Anyways, I've already read 1 book for this vlog. This is the 2nd book that I have read for this vlog. This is Woman Eating by Kohda. This is a shortish novel that I heard about from Books and Lala, and literally like everyone hates it because they're not sure what's happening. And I think that that truly means that because I love it, I do love vampire adjacent type stories. So this is kind of a coming of age story of a vampire who's learning to like fend for herself. And this isn't like a made vampire. Well, she was made into a vampire, but she like grew up and she's lived her life being a vampire and growing up, and now she's like on her own for the first time because her mom is going through like a midlife crisis and kind of losing her mind a little bit. So like she's on her own trying to figure out life, trying to figure out what kind of vampire she's going to be and what kind of a person she's going to be. So I'm going to leave that here with you right now because I want my video to speak for itself. I will say though that I gave this a 5 stars, and if it sounds like your thing, I recommend it. If it doesn't, don't. Like this isn't a horror novel. This is not a graphic, vampire eating. This is like, instead of being the actions of a vampire, this heavily instead focuses on the themes that vampire novels bring up. Okay, next I finished This Strange Way of Dying, which does have a video for it. It is linked up in the cards for you guys. This is a short story collection by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. She wrote all 15 short stories that are in here. It does include the short story Flash Frame, if you have already read it, but other than that, there are 14 brand new stories that I've never read before. This was her first published work, which I feel like informs you of what her future works will be like. So it was a really cool collection. I'll let the rest of my video speak for itself, but I did end up giving this a 4-star. After, of course, averaging out the ratings of every short story that was in here. The next 2 books that I finished for the Aeldia Adventure year-long choose-your-own adventure vlog thing that I'm doing. This is finishing a series, Count Your Lucky Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur, and this is starting a series, A Darker Shade of Magic by V. Schwab. So let's talk about this one first because I finished it first. So this is the third in the series. The first one is Written in the Stars, then it's Hang the Moon, then it's Count Your Lucky Stars. I hated Hang the Moon. So much so that I've gotten rid of it. It's not on my shelves anymore. I'm selling it on Pango Books. I hate it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I hated the characters in it or if I was all of a sudden hating this author's writing when I loved Written in the Stars. Do I like straight romance anymore? I do. But like, is it just the smut that I care for? Or do I... Anyways, so I was very hesitant to pick this up, but I just really wanted to get it off my shelves because if I hate it, I hate it and I want it gone. But I didn't. I loved it, actually. I really enjoyed it. I think that this one, it does have a miscommunication kind of tropiness that's happening, but it felt real because in real life, people miscommunicate, and we do it because sometimes communicating is harder than actually talking to somebody about it. And I felt like that was so true and so accurate, and it felt very real. After 2 books, we have 2 couples, and now we have 1 single friend in our couple situation. And now that single friend is getting their relationship. So Margot is the friend that we have seen before, and Olivia is a brand new character who's being brought into the fold because now we are focusing on the wedding of the straight characters that we saw in book 2. And like, I do hate that. I hate that a lot because I don't give a fuck about anybody's wedding. Weddings are stressful. I don't care. And I didn't care about their relationship, so I don't care about their wedding. And like, couldn't care less. Couldn't care less. But it does set like kind of a nice background for these characters to have to interact because Olivia is the wedding planner and Margot is the best woman. So it was fun. It was interesting the way that this is a second chance romance. They were kind of a thing in high school, and because of a misunderstanding or a misinterpreting of events, they ended up not being together. 11 years has passed, and now they're both single again, and it looks like they're getting together. So I typically don't like a second chance romance, because if it didn't work before, why is it going to work now? And I feel like when the first time you guys were together was in high school, and now you guys are nearly 30, there's a huge growth there. So I do appreciate the very long time for them to grow and mature. I do appreciate them both understanding that they do miscommunicate or don't communicate because communicating is hard. And they both understand that about themselves. So it's not like they're here actively miscommunicating and fighting. They are actively not communicating and trying to work on it. But I also don't feel like the third act conflict, because it wasn't a breakup, it was more of a conflict. It was an important conflict to have because when you are a couple that doesn't communicate, things are going to build up to a boiling point where you have a really big fight where you say really shitty things about each other, and you kind of have to go figure out how to like come back together. So it was a nice little romance filled with things that I think people could pick on and not like, but it felt very real, which was nice because very often fantasy romance ends up being not just fantasy because it's a fantastical situation or a fantastical world they're in. It ends up being like, people don't act that way. There's a lot of things that aren't real in fantasy romance in the relationship area. But this was a really nice story about people who felt real having a real relationship and it being hard. 4 stars. And then I read this one. I loved this one. Okay. Do you know how long I've had this one? I have videos of me talking about how I think it was so dumb to have like Black London and White London and Red London. And we don't talk about Black London, but it was there. And like Grey London, like dumb, but it was great. It was so dumb, it was brilliant.
So dumb, it's brilliant.
No!
It's just dumb.
Honestly, this was really good. I think what makes this is not the magic or the fantasy or anything like that. I think what makes this is the characters, which good, because I am much more of a character-driven person anyway. That's the way I like to read my novels. That's the way I like my novels to be set up. So when the back was focused nearly entirely on like the setting and the world and what's going on, I was like, couldn't be me. So that's why I decided to also pick this one up for January, because if I'm not going to like it, I don't want to have it on my shelf anymore. I'm going to get 3 books off of my TBR. It'll be great. But instead I loved it. And I really enjoyed Lila and Kel and the dynamic and what this magic meant and how creepy it was. I was almost shocked, though, at how this presented as not really feeling like the first book in a series. It does feel very much like it could be a standalone, which makes me sad. There are things that are sprinkled throughout that, like, if you're paying close enough attention, you can pick up on those things. But this didn't scream very obviously start of a trilogy, you know? But those characters were really great and they were really intriguing. So we are following Kel mainly as he, as a magical being, traverses through 3 different Londons: white, gray, and red. There is a black London. The idea is that the world got so overly saturated with magic that was uncontrollable that Black London was just destroyed. And so these realities were stacked on top of each other. And so they had to close off all of their doors to make sure that like leakage of bad magic stayed where it was. So that's where we come into with all of these different Londons. And we have Kel, who is traversing and ends up meeting Lila, who is a member of Grey London that has no magic at all. And all she wants is to run away and have an adventure and be a bad bitch. And I fucking loved her, and so did Kel. And we were falling in love with Lila together. It was great. So I really enjoyed this. I felt like this is like an amuse-bouche. It gave me a small bite and it really made me hungry for more. So I did end up buying the other 2 to finish up this series because this was just lovely. I really enjoyed this. It did kind of put me in like a book hangover because I haven't read anything since, and it's February 4th, so it was great. I did end up giving this a 4-star. I don't necessarily like to give books in a series 5-star until the end of the series, because to me books in a series inherently do not stand on their own, because they have to rely on what's happening before and afterwards to finish a story, finish telling it, finish the beginning, or finish the ending. So it is not very often that I give books in a series 5 stars. I've also learned my lesson giving books in a series 5 stars, because then I'll give like the Poppy War 5 stars and the Dragon Republic 5 stars. And then whatever the fuck the third one was, like 2 stars, because I hated that ending. So anyways, 4 stars with the possibility of the series being an overall 5-star series. All right. So those are all of the books that I read in January. Let's see, how many pages is that? 6 books. I read 1,922 pages. That's nowhere near the 5,000 page a month goal that I had. But you know what? We were nearly 2,000 and I barely read anything. So I'm going to take it as a win. And that's also not including the 2 books that I carried over from 2022. So I'm just going to take it as a win and keep on trucking. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!